Welcome, Climate Viewers. My name is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, and WeatherModificationHistory.com. Tonight we're going to talk about the big picture, geoengineering, and what I do, why I do it, and why it's so important that people see the big picture. Climate change has happened before. We fixed it with trees. And today we're talking about climate change, and the fix will kill billions. So I could not pick a more important topic to talk about. You know, this is why I do what I do and the big picture. So first off, I'd like to thank all of my guys, my climate viewers over on patreon.com/climateviewer. You guys are the best. I really appreciate you supporting me. Your belief in me is going to allow me to continue to do what I do. With that, I'd also like to see you guys over in chat. The chat is exploding today. I had several hack attempts on ClimateViewer 3D. So had some great suggestions from a couple of my buddies over there. And I appreciate y'all. Appreciate you. But let's just jump right into this thing. Oh, before I do that, let me also mention over on the interviews page, you can see a link to the Grimerica podcast. I'll be with Darren and Graham on May 9th, 2018. I hope you guys will tune in for that. In addition, I'm going to be interviewing Max Bliss this Sunday. Max is a good buddy of mine. He went and spoke at the EPA hearing with me in 2015, and we've been friends much longer than that, but it's going to be a very interesting interview to say the least. So what's the big picture I'm trying to show today? If you go to the top of ClimateViewer.com, if you're on desktop, it'll look like this, and you just click on pollution. You can come along. All the links are already in the details above. But basically, climate change has happened before, and it was much worse than even what they're predicting today. And I'd like to show you guys the big picture, because for me, when I talk about climate change, I'm concerned with, the things that matter most to people: the destruction of clean, drinkable water, destruction of land through deforestation, monoculture crops, drilling, killing fields, and toxic waste dumps, destruction of the ocean, dumping chemical weapons, nuclear reactors, and coating the entire ocean in plastic, and destruction of the sky, weather modification, geoengineering, electromagnetic pollution from ground and space-based sources. These are things that affect people. This is climate change today, and it is affecting you. It is killing people. It is a serious issue. Nowhere in this list of 4 things is CO2. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of people who will convince you that CO2 is the biggest boogeyman on the planet. But for me personally, I'd rather deal with things that we can deal with today. Here's a picture from my old Google Earth map, and you could just see these are toxic waste dumps. The green ones are fracking wells. The clouds are cloud seeding projects, nuclear reactors, and the list goes on. This is stuff that affects you today. That's my kind of climate change. But regardless, you can get into those sections right here in the pollution subsections, nuclear radiation and electromagnetic radiation, and learn all about 5G and how nuclear waste is turned into bombs. And it has many similarities to this geoengineering thing. But most importantly, what we're going to focus on today is climate change 1.0, or as it was known, the Dust Bowl. So during the Dust Bowl, it's the word, apocalyptic, Armageddon, Revelations style climate change happened. And what did we do? We planted trees to get out of it. So let's explore that, because I don't think many people know this story. Great documentary by Ken Burns on the Dust Bowl. Give it a weekend, watch it. It'll blow your mind. Ken Burns is an amazing documentarian. One day I hope to be half as good as him. And then we'll get into this at the end of the video, because planting trees is very important. So the Dust Bowl happened in the 30s. And it was mainly due to overcropping and cutting down trees. And this led to massive erosion and things like this black blizzard, as you can see right here on the screen.
Into a towering wall more than 10,000 feet high.
It just seemed to reach from horizon to horizon and almost to the sky.
The suffocating clouds barreled across the Midwest. 350 million tons of dirt on the move. Enough topsoil to fill enough dump trucks to circle the planet twice. It began in 1931, when only 17 inches of rain fell on the high plains, 3 less than the normal average. But droughts had affected this area before. What was different this time was the disappearance of native grasses that had held down the soil for thousands of years. Some 3 to 12 inches of fertile topsoil lay exposed to the heat and the wind.
The wind begins to blow, and so the soil begins to erode, and then it starts going up into the air, and the Dust Bowl began in truth and in reality.
And that's just a little bit of that. Please check that stuff out. But the Dust Bowl, worst version of climate change you can imagine. 10,000 foot high sandstorms blocking out the sun. The ground was, destroyed. The federal government actually went and bought back land from farmers simply to plant trees. And this was called the Great Plains Shelter Belt. And most people have never heard of this. And that's amazing to me. So I'm going to read this entire paragraph because it's this important. The Great Plains Shelter Belt was a project to create windbreaks in the Great Plains states of the United States that began in 1934. President Franklin D. Roosevelt initiated the project in response to the severe dust storms of the Dust Bowl, which resulted in significant soil erosion and drought. The United States Forest Service believed that planting trees on the perimeters of farms would reduce wind velocity and lessen evaporation of moisture from soil. By 1942, 220 million trees had been planted, stretching out 18,600 miles. 29,900 kilometers to all you people in the rest of the world. In a 100 mile zone wide zones from Canada to the Brazos River, even in 2007. Quote, the federal response to the Dust Bowl, including the Prairie States Forestry Project, which planted the Great Plains Shelter Belt and creation of the Soil Erosion Service, represents the largest and most focused effort of the United States government to address an environmental problem ever. So why are we? What are we talking about here? I mean, why aren't we planting trees? Here's a great map of where we planted those trees, and you can see North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, all this black area, 220 million trees, and it fixed itself. Amazing. So why are we doing this now? In Nebraska, historic shelter belts are making way for more crops. Now, any of you who have been over to weathermodificationhistory.com have heard the slogan, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Yet, what fixed climate change in the past has now come back to haunt us because of greed, because of over-farming. We're now going to have that disappear. As if it wasn't bad enough they're cutting down the entire Amazon rainforest, old growth forest, which is essential for all life on the planet, let alone the fact that those trees make clouds, and that's interrupting the hydrological cycle. All of that aside, they're cutting down the shelter belts for greed, for money. And that is why we're in the situation we are today with geoengineering. So now today they want to tell you that CO2 and rising global temperatures are going to kill people. And, that's a super bad thing. So what are their solutions? There's really mainly two. One of which is suck CO2 out of the air, and the other is block out the sun. Now, the first one, trees do that. Trees suck CO2 out of the air. They are CO2 sucking machines. And what do they do in return? They give us oxygen. They oxygenate the ground. They do many, many different features. Cool the climate, make clouds. But no, they want to create artificial trees to suck CO2 out of the sky. Or block your sun out by mimicking a volcano. This is crazy to me. So I set out to try to figure out what's this all about. What is this geoengineering thing I'm hearing about? And I actually started doing this in 2011. And I have a page devoted to it, Geoengineering and Weather Modification Exposed, at climateviewer.com/geoengineering. And it has a frequently asked questions kind of thing here. Very lengthy discussion right here about how it will kill people. We're going to get into that in a second. But who's pushing this? I mean, where's the money coming from? Where's the ideology coming from on this? And I found this great paper, citation right there at the bottom, mapping the landscape of climate engineering. And this was published in 2014. And what you could see on the left-hand side is who's paying, and on the right-hand side, who's doing the research and writing the papers. And what you quickly see is the National Science Foundation is the largest contributor to this, followed by the European Commission, NASA, the NERC, the EPSRC, and this little guy right here, U.S. Department of Energy, of course, National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCAR. I interviewed them at the Weather Mod Conference. A whole bunch of other Royal Society, the usual names. But this one right here might jump off the page at you. Fund for Innovative Climate and Energy Research. That's Bill Gates. More on that in just a second. Over on the other side, we see the major authors who are basically the lobbyists, the technocrats who are going to make this doom scenario, killing billions with blocking out sunlight. And the biggest culprits are Ken Caldera, Alan Robach, Ben Kravitz, Peter J. Irvine, David Keith, and the list goes on. Now, I could tell a story an hour long about each and every single one of these individuals. Not enough time to do that tonight. Plenty of time in the future. But if you scroll down just a little further, I've got my main 3 points here. Geoengineering programs, sponsors. These are also, like who's involved, universities, corporations, all that sort of thing. And patents, and everybody's seen my patent list. I originally created this in 2011. It's been featured on geoengineeringwatch.org, naturalnews.com, and, InfoWars, everywhere. Everybody's seen my patent list. There's been many videos. But this one right here, geoengineering programs, I don't think many people have seen it. So we're going to go through that one. Because I don't think people really understand this whole geoengineering idea. Now, this is dated 2013-10/06, so October of 2013. This was actually written before that because I had three websites before ClimateViewer.com, Resonated.com, Resonated.net, and TerraformingInc.com, like Terraforming Incorporated, because I saw geoengineering as terraforming. Interestingly enough, right now, that is exactly what David Keith and company are talking about. If you come up here to the top, you'll see Harvard Planetary Designs, historical perspectives on the intersection of geoengineering and terraforming. David Keith, laughing at you, bro. That was my website in 2013. When I said terraforming back then, you laughed. Today, you're presenting it. Cute. But regardless, this page is devoted to showing you all of the geoengineering programs going on today. So what are they talking about? I told you about artificial trees sucking CO2 out of the air, reflective crops that basically bounce sunlight back to space mirrors which keep sun from coming in, aerosols. Ooh, there's looks like a C5A galaxy military plane, C-130 probably. It's got prop actually on it, sidetracked. But regardless, spraying aerosols. And it says flaw, risk of ozone depletion, unknown weather effects, fails to prevent acidic oceans or acid rain. Cloud seeding boats. This is the Marine Cloud Brightening Project. More on that below. And things like ocean iron fertilization. Russ George did this, and the whole world went, oh my God. And it was called the Hydas Salmon Project. Anyway, we won't get into that either. And then Biocar, well, that's another video. Regardless, there's a group out there called the ETC group, or Emerging Technologies Co-op, I think, or something like that. Etc. group is what I always call them. But they're my favorite peoples because they actually stopped a geoengineering program. That's some real activism. And they created this map, Geoengineering, a half century of Earth and system experimentation. And then I go on. So Bill Gates funds geoengineering studies. Pfizer. This is it right here. All your weather are belong to me. If you don't get the euphemism there, it's a video game quote. It's kind of funny. I thought it was hilarious. Many scientists are like, that's not proper English. But regardless, what I saw very quickly was that Bill Gates' money, while funding geoengineering, strayed into the world of hurricane control very quickly. And that troubled me. So it goes like this. Hurricane hacking, the Department of Homeland Security enters the weather modification business. This was posted November of 2013. And I saw a very weird series of events. So Bill Gates hangs out with this dude named Nathan Myhrvold. He's known as the Patent Troll. And the Patent Troll and Bill Gates had I guess can only be like a Christmas party or a New Year's party, because shortly after New Year's 2008, the year Obama came into office, there were several patents filed called water alteration structure applications and methods, and the list goes on. All of these patent filings were about steering hurricanes. And it kind of freaked me out because the names on these patents, which officially was issued at patent 8348550, the very next year, had some pretty crazy names in there. Kenneth Caldera, William H. Gates III, that's Bill Gates, Roderick Hyde, Nathan P. Myhrvold, the Patent Troll, John Latham, the Silver Lining Project, Marine Cloud Brightening Project, Boats, who also was created by Stephen Salter. So there's the two salt spraying boat guys, and Lowell Wood Jr., Dr. Evil. So, and I could tell you about the rest of these people, but I bolded the ones that are most important because this is freaking crazy. So I'm seeing this sequence of events. It goes like this very quickly. In 2008, a bunch of patent files were filed, and they talk about taking money from people to promise them storm protection from hurricanes and steer hurricanes away from them. And I asked Ken Caldera personally, when you steer it away from the poor people, away from the oil fields, and it hits the poor people, God didn't kill people, climate change didn't kill people, you did. What are you thinking? So this is where where geoengineering and weather modification quickly blurs. And I find that troubling. So what happens is the Department of Homeland Security in February of 2008 had the Department of Homeland Security Hurricane Modification Workshop, which you can see below. And I've got all the information on that. And I actually got this from Dr. Stephen Salter. He allowed me access to his FTP server, and I went rooting around in there, and I saw our hurricane folder, and I was like, ooh, what is that doing there? Read the document, and I translated all of this. Thank you, Dr. Salter, for being so transparent. Appreciate you. But real quickly after that, the DHS got involved. Then there was a weather modification conference, and they talked about new unconventional concepts and legal ramifications, like Bernard Eastland died right before talking about using things like HARP and solar-powered satellites to steer thunderstorms. On Engineering Hurricanes by William Cotton. I interviewed him this year at the Weather Modification Conference, and reducing hurricane intensity using upwelling pumps. Then there was the Future Tech Guidance to Understanding Future, DHS, S&T, Critical Research Innovative Focus Area, more DHS stuff on doing this hurricane stuff. And then the patents were actually filed and approved in 2009. And then there was a U.S. Senate hearing on it, Weathering the Storm, the need for a national hurricane initiative. Then finally, NOAA says no to Department of Homeland Security hurricane modification. Here's the letter from NOAA saying, look, we did Project Storm Fury. We really don't want to get back into steering hurricanes. It's a bad idea. But that didn't stop them. So they went ahead and did it, and it was called, the DHS went ahead and did it and started with the Hurricane Aerosol Microphysics Program, HAMP. And the list goes on here. NASA's Genesis and Rapid Intensification Process, GRIP. So NASA and the DHS just hit it off and started flying drones in there, and you can actually watch the Department of Homeland Security presentation on that right here. So this was troubling to me, big league, because this is what it looked like in the patent. Operate storm suppression equipment. Alert at least one interested party, big oil field, as to the potential for storm damage. Provide information to at least one interested party of the cost of the likelihood of reducing damage for at least one interested party. Hey, oil field, don't you want to save millions of dollars on the damage from this hurricane? We could just steer it away from you. Receive at least one payment from at least one interested party. Hey, big oil field, pay me cash, we make hurricane go away. Receive a request from interested party to provide storm protection. Bill Gates, Ken Caldera, Lowell Wood, Edward Teller, and Roderick Hyde, Stephen Salter, John Latham. Freaky. Very freaky. So this was part of that Silver Lining Project. That's the two I was just telling you about. You can read the article on that. This is the Iron Fertilization, Haida Salmon Restoration Project. I actually spoke with Russ George personally, and I said, of all the geoengineering proposals, this is probably the weakest, you know what I mean? Doesn't scare me the most. But then there's the SRM idea, and it was originally called the Stratoshield. This also comes from Intellectual Ventures. Intellectual Ventures is owned by who? Bill Gates. So this Stratoshield was basically a hose to the sky. It came out of a warehouse, flew all the way up into the stratosphere, and just sprayed chemicals into the sky to block sunlight. And finally, the SPICE project, Stratospheric Particle Injection for Climate Engineering. And this is the one that the ETC group shut down with protests. Pretty freaking epic. So their idea was simple. They were going to put a balloon up there and spray some water out. Interestingly enough, David Keith is doing this now. He's going to be doing it this fall in Arizona. And he's using a balloon to spray chemicals in the sky to do what the SPICE project done. So I hope the ETC group can save us from that, but I hope that someone like you cares a whole awful lot and we can do something about that, because geoengineering will kill billions. And we're going to go into that in graphic detail. So that's why I proposed something called the Environmental Modification Accountability Act of 2018, because I believe that climate engineering, geoengineering, weather modification, climate intervention, whatever you want to call it, cloud seeding, all of this is going on a global scale, behind closed doors without public knowledge, and they're blaming freaky weather events on CO2, which is insanity. At least with the Dust Bowl, they were pragmatic. They knew the problem and they fixed it with trees. Today, we're in this wild, wacky world where anything goes. Let's mimic volcanoes, block out sunlight. It's going to kill people. So what? Push along. Let's do this thing. So, as I mentioned, on this InMod page, I had earlier this year gone to the 21st Conference on Planned and Inadvertent Weather Modification. And it was January 9th through the 11th, 2018, Austin, Texas. And I interviewed Dr. Jim Fleming, the U.S. Naval Research Lab, Raytheon, UCAR, Dr. Cotton, the one who talked about steering hurricanes, and Dr. Daniel Rosenfeld from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and Nicoletta Florio from BeHeroic.com. Now, this conference was pretty darn interesting, and it was an eye-opener for me. Don't want to get sidetracked with the conference, but one of the attendees was Dr. Alan Robach, and at that conference on Wednesday, he said he had a speech called Stratospheric Sulfur Geoengineering Benefits and Risks. And if you look right here, it says recorded presentation. I hope you guys will watch it all. I will probably mirror it on my YouTube channel shortly. But this is pretty priceless stuff, and I'm just going to let this particular part play. Okay?
So I went to the first meeting on geoengineering at NASA Ames, and this issue of Rolling Stone came out that week, and across the top, it's got our two favorite people there, but across the top, Dr. Evil's plan to stop global warming. And inside there was an article about Lowell Wood, who used to work with Edward Teller, saying, oh, we can control the climate. I'm a physicist. I'm smart. I know what to do. And I went to this meeting for 2 days at NASA Ames, and the room was too hot, and they couldn't control the temperature of the room, but they were talking about controlling the temperature of the planet. And there was these physicists and engineers thought, oh, this is a really cool problem. I started writing down reasons why I thought maybe it wasn't such a good idea. And I got up to 20, and I published a paper, 20 reasons why geoengineering may be a bad idea.
And we're going to leave that up on the screen for a moment. So he did publish a paper on that. So even though Alan Robach rides the fence, he still goes along and keeps talking about this geoengineering. He came up with 20 reasons why we shouldn't. And I think it's pretty obvious when you look over here that this is a bad idea. Benefits 6, bad reasons 27. Let's go through those really quickly. Number 1, drought in Africa and Asia perturbs ecology with more diffuse radiation. Ozone depletion, continued ocean acidification, may not stop ice sheets from melting. Impacts on tropospheric chemistry. That's where we live, in the troposphere. Might screw with the skies. Rapid warming if stopped, also known as the double catastrophe scenario. Google that one, double catastrophe scenario. Human impacts, less solar electricity generation. I preach about that. Dane Wigington preaches about that. We agree on that. So geoengineering will pretty much shoot solar power in the foot. That's a bad thing. Degrade passive solar heating. Effects on airplanes flying in the stratosphere. What you talking about, Willis? More on that at the end of the video. Effects on electrical properties of the atmosphere. You mean like what HAARP's doing in the ionospheric heaters? Affects satellite remote sensing. Well, satellites won't work if you block out the sun because you can't look down at the ground anymore. That's a bad thing. Affect degrade terrestrial optical astronomy. So you can't, if you block out the sun with clouds of aluminum, barium, titanium dioxide, calcium, bismuth triiodide, diamond dust. These are things that they are actually talking about spraying, and are today. Would make astronomy a thing of the past. Your children's children won't be able to see stars. My children's children. I have 2 daughters. That's why it concerns me greatly. More sunburn. Ooh, it changes the UV, settings of the world. Who wants to get more sunburn? Environmental impact of implementation. Whiter skies. That is already happening today. Fact. Skies are getting whiter. Why? Because as Chuck Long from CRES said, we're accidentally geoengineering the planet with aircraft that are making a subliminal ice haze, which is whitening the skies. Already happening. Geoengineering. Affects stargazing, as I previously mentioned. Human error during unknowns. Human error during implementation. Humans are fallible, and we shouldn't screw with the entire globe's weather. Unexpected consequences, like somebody turning it into a freaking weapon. That's a thing. Governance cannot stop effects quickly. Back to the double catastrophe scenario. Commercial control. There will be money involved in this, and money always changes everything. Whose hand is on the thermostat? I mean, who are you going to trust with the thermostat for the whole planet? The United Nations? A couple bankers? Should it be lawyers? Should it be scientists? I mean, who would you trust to make the decision on should we add more geoengineering chemicals to the sky? Oh, it's now getting too hot. Let's make it colder. Societal disruption. Conflict between countries. Double catastrophes on a scenario. We started geoengineering, then we had World War III. So we couldn't keep geoengineering. Now we're in the middle of World War III, and the whole planet's weather's screwed up. Oh my God. Conflicts with current treaties, or conflicts, with current treaties, like the Convention for Biological Diversity 2012, and the NMOD ban, which geoengineering would certainly be a long-lasting severe effect. NMOD is the Environmental Modification Convention. It's part of what I'm talking about with my Environmental Modification Accountability Act. So that's what he's talking about there. Moral hazard, the prospect of it working could reduce drive for mitigation. Meaning, if we geoengineer, people won't stop cutting down trees and stop putting pollution into the sky. And then ethics, military use of technology. Now, of course, Ken Caldera is like, there's no way in hell that geoengineering could ever be used for military purposes. And I proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Weather Mod History. You can watch Weather Mod Hour Episode 1, Intro to Weather Warfare. It's definitely used as a weapon. Moral authority. Do we have the right to do this? My answer is hell no. So please watch that whole video, Stratospheric Sulfur Geoengineering Benefits and Risks by Alan Robach. And it is available just by simply going to the NMOD page and clicking on the 21st conference. Go to the page there and you can see the Alan Robach thing. Links in the details, by the way. I made it easy. So in that little piece we were just watching, he mentions this article, which is on ClimateViewer.com. It was originally up on TerraformingInc.com. And it's Can Dr. Evil Save the World? And this was originally written by Jeff Goodall and posted on Rolling Stone. Of course, it was deleted from the Rolling Stone, so I grabbed it from archive.org and mirrored the whole damn thing. And it basically goes like this, the three top weaponeers in the world at Lawrence Livermore Lab basically got together and said, hey, we could control the planet's climate through, and here's the paper, Edward Teller, Lowell Wood, Roderick Hyde, Global Warming and Ice Ages, Prospects for Physics-Based Modulation of Global Change, Lawrence Livermore National Lab, 1997. Coincidentally, the same year that the word chemtrails first appeared on the internet, 1997. Big coincidence. And then that was followed up pretty quickly by another paper, and this is where Ken Caldera comes from. Long Range Weather Prediction and Prevention of Climate Catastrophes, a status report by Edward Teller, Ken Caldera, et al. So Ken Caldera basically took their idea for geoengineering, pumped it into a computer, and then when he spat out the numbers, he says, guys, this doesn't look so bad. And they said this at the 24th International Seminar on Planetary Emergencies. Okay. So that was part 2, and then now that they got their validation from the nerds, the three, weaponeers went on to write their third paper, Active Climate Stabilization, Practical Physics-Based Approach to Prevention of Climate Change, Edward Teller, Roderick Hyde, and Lowell Wood. And this was in 2002. And it was off to the races from there because basically Paul Crutzen won a Nobel Prize and said stratospheric spraying of a stratospheric aerosol injection could be a way to mitigate global warming, and basically signed off on all this crap. So today we have Bill Gates and company, the National Science Foundation, and all those people I showed you earlier funding this stuff. And its roots, although it goes back as far as I've seen the first geoengineering proposals in a paper that was to John F. Kennedy. And they talked about, similar things, coating the ocean in oil to slow down hurricanes and all kinds of stuff. So, and there was Booty Code, and there's a whole bunch of other people, in 77 Marchesi. But regardless, geoengineering in its current form got its major push from a weapons lab, Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And that's the fact. That's why he's mentioned in this article. You can read it on ClimateViewer.com. So, I had been getting into this interesting topic, and then lo and behold, this happened to me. I got a tweet from a guy, and he says, "Hey, man, the geoengineers are talking about you on their forum." And I was like, "What? What forum? What's you talking about?" Date is December 8th, 2012. Man, that feels like ages ago. And most of you don't know anything about this because I don't go around bragging. I tried to do this without putting my face out there. I tried to do this, by sending my information to other people and getting them to resonate it, but it didn't work. They just didn't get it, didn't understand what I was doing or whatever. So now I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But this is just fascinating. So Andrew Lockie, he's a forum moderator for Ken Caldera's Geoengineering group on Google. This forum is owned by Ken Caldera, moderated by Andrew Lockie. And Andrew posted a link to my YouTube video, which was a congressional hearing on geoengineering that happened in 2010. I'm sure many of you do not know that ever happened to this day. So this is pretty funny. This guy responds to the video. This is 3 years old, just completely upset. And dude's like, perhaps your comment was meant to wonder why we're being told of this 3 years later by Andrew. In Andrew's defense, let me note several factors. This, November 5th, 2009, was just put up a few days ago by Mr. Jim Lee. Looking at this will lead you to 2 more hearings of the committee and one over in the UK. But this is the freaking hilarious part at the bottom. Let's skip all this. As I follow, here, let me see if I can zoom this in some more for you guys. As I follow this thread, I learned that Mr. Lee is clearly opposed to geoengineering. I could find no comments on him on Biocar, but he's endorsed the work by ETC, the ETC group. Which group has been opposed to Biocar, relying only on the research by one other group? I'm sorry to report, this is priceless. I am sorry to report that Mr. Lee is apt to be quite active and influential in opposing all parts of geoengineering. He has a big site. And you can imagine my surprise, shock, and just chomping at the bit to get in there. And I'm like, well, how do I post in this forum? They're talking about me in there. I want to get in on the fun. So in 2012, beginning of 2013, I began debating Ken Caldera and all the geoengineers. These are the facts. And while I was there, I found this interesting little post by Peter J. Irving. SRM Geoengineering, How to Deal with the Losers. It is likely that any solar radiation management geoengineering intervention will create winners and losers, and some nations may always be against any intervention whatsoever. Gregory Benford raised the issue of reaching an agreement on global scale on how problematic it would be if, for example, the Arctic Council of Nations agreed to initiate a decade-long field trial to cool the Arctic by 1 degree Celsius. How could they deal with the complaints from nations who felt this experiment had induced a negative change in their climate? If in any given year there are floods, droughts, heat waves, etc., but during the field trial a fraction of these events would be attributed, rightly or wrongly, partially or fully, to the intervention, 2 questions arise. Could it be determined if changes in the climate outside the target area had occurred as a result of the intervention or geoengineering during the 10-year trial? How would aggrieved nations or peoples seek reparations for perceived negative impacts, scientifically proven or otherwise? So really what they're talking about here is liability. How are we going to deal with the winners and losers? And what they mean by losers is dead people. Proven beyond a shadow of a doubt before the end of this video. So they really, gave it hell, and they said, let's push ahead with it. We'll just keep researching it. Maybe we'll figure out a way not to kill so many people, or maybe that's the plan all along. Especially when you find out that Dr. Evil started this current push. It's funded by Bill Gates, and the list goes on. So this is an article dated 2014, Jim Lee versus Geoengineering, Public Refuses SRM Proposals. And it was originally titled Scientists Actually Listen, because I thought they were listening because they got these public response papers back. But right here at the top, you can see those committee hearings that were mentioned just now. Hey, we had not heard about these hearings. So it was Geoengineering assessing the implications of large-scale climate intervention. This was at the U.S. House of Representatives Subcommittee on Energy and Environment, Thursday, November 2009. Then there was the Regulation of Geoengineering Science and Technology Committee in the UK Parliament. YouTube video link on that as well. Don't believe me? Go over here and look for yourself. Here they are having the meeting. Published December 3rd, 2012. And it's got about 2,300 views because people don't know about it. I mean, y'all don't know shit about what I've done, obviously. I would like to try to sum it all up in a video today. So that's what we're doing. Now, each of these hearings I put on YouTube with links to the original, so it's probably gone now. Site can't be reached, science.house.gov.hearings. Ooh, there's just a slash mission. Did I get hacked? Page not found. Still, I'll update the links regardless. But these things happen. You can see the videos and go to archive.org, pop the links in there and see them yourself. So that's when this thing happened. Mr. G, the thing I read you just now, and I made a statement, I really thought about it, and I made my point. And my point was this, that if cloud seeding has been in use for 60 years, and they cannot prove scientifically they know what, the heck they're doing, how can you deploy cloud seeding on a global scale, call it geoengineering, to circumvent laws on weather modification? Because that's really what they're doing. They're just making a new word up for the technology that's already been around. And that's the goal here, is to circumvent the laws on weather modification by calling it something else. We're not doing local weather. We're doing global climate. Don't you know the difference between weather and climate? What are you, stupid? But if you affect weather over a long period, that changes climate. That's like a duh. So these are statements made by several places, like the National Science Foundation, Critical Issues in Weather Modification Research 2003. And they say this: although 40 years has passed since the first NAS report on weather modification, this committee finds itself very much in concurrence with the findings of that assessment. We conclude that initiation of large-scale operational weather modification programs would be premature. Why? Because you don't know what the hell you're doing. And the list goes on and on. The World Meteorological Society Executive Summary on WMO Statement on Weather Modification. Weather modification technologies that claim to have achieved such large-scale or dramatic effects do not have a sound scientific basis and should be treated with suspicion. Just like geoengineering. That's the WMO saying it, because cloud seeding doesn't work. And here's one from Edwards Aquifer just on cloud seeding. There was actually evidence that cloud seeding could actually decrease rainfall by accident. So if you don't know what the heck you're doing with cloud seeding after 60 years, why are we even entertaining the idea of geoengineering in our lifetime? We do not understand what we're doing up there. We are basically experimenting. It's not a program. It's not operational. There are no promises, no guarantees. This is complete experimentation. And this I posted this to Ken Caldera. This is the actual post I sent to Ken Caldera And I mentioned the hurricane thing. I'm like, but dude, you're kind of conflating the two. You know what I mean? Like, what's the deal here? You know, I say the lines between weather modification and geoengineering are further blurred here. So, you know, you're talking about spraying soot into hurricanes to do climate mitigation of mitigating hurricanes is now geoengineering. And the Department of Homeland Security, Bill Gates, the hurricane tamer, the man who would stop hurricanes with car tires, Stephen Salter, also the guy who does the Silver Lining Project, Marine Cloud Brightening Project, salt spraying boats. Also the guy who signed this right here, Stephen Salter, Bill Gates, all these guys steering hurricanes. I already told you the story. You get the point. I said it to Ken Caldera on his forum 2013. And I say, here we have several well-known names inventing storm protection systems that sell protection to investors. This is also relevant due to the following comments from NOAA about modifying hurricanes and how they said it's a bad idea. Stuff I already told you. So I go on, and I make my argument as best I can. And, you know, I made a weather control timeline. And you can see that there. And, you know, Ken Caldera was like, hey, man, you know, I like this. A lot of what you have in the timeline is about weather, so weather modification is an appropriate label. As an academic, I'd like to see academic literature a bit more important. I would like to see citations like Boudico early and et cetera, you know, like the Marchesi and the early geoengineers. Screw you, Ken Caldera. It's my timeline. I put in it what I want. But regardless, go all the way to the bottom of this very lengthy article. And I was having great success whooping his butt in his own forum back there. And you can see every post I made on that forum here. And there were a bunch of them. So if you want to read me arguing with geoengineers, this is your thing, and this is the actual one right here. First I made the you don't have enough variables argument, and they argued with me and they didn't understand what I was saying, so I restated it here, and this is the second most viewed post on his forum to this date. And Russ George, the guy, the rogue geoengineer, beat me out, but whatever, dude, happens. So here is that post. How will the geoengineer statement answer the statements? This is December 27th, 2012. They deleted my original post. Now, they didn't delete my post from all of these other posts I made on there. You can go see plenty of posts with Jim's comments still there. But this is Ken Caldera saying, Jim, you seem to be arguing against a straw man. First of all, of course, if climate is modified, weather is also modified. Nobody's rebranding anything. But regardless, you can see right here, even though they deleted my post, it's in the response. You can see on this, Jim Lee from resonated@gmail wrote, and then there's all the same quotes. I mirrored this on my geoengineering page because they deleted it. That's why I just showed it to you. Regardless, Stephen Salter and John Latham come in on this, and of course, here's where he's like, hey, you can check out all my research, and that's where I found the Homeland Security stuff to begin with. It's kind of funny. But regardless, you know, I was breaking Ken Caldera's gonads back in 2012. And James Roger Fleming, world's top historian on weather modification geoengineering, he calls it 3 cycles of promise, hype, and hype. The pathological history of weather and climate modification. We've already experienced 2 major cycles of promise and hype in weather history and weather modification. They both demonstrated large-scale pathological features. The first cycle, initiated by James Espy's speculative proposal to enhance precipitation by lighting huge fires. They were called pluviculturalists, or pluviculture. Now, pluviculture pretty much goes from about 1830 to 1946. And then, in 1946, when Irving Langmuir, Bernard Vonnegut, and Vincent Schaefer from GE invented cloud seeding, that's when we entered the second phase, the cloud seeding phase of this. But now we're in the third cycle, and that third cycle is geoengineering. And they all have a pathology to them. They claim, things they cannot prove they're going to do, and then they sell it to somebody, and then they do it. So pluviculture days, they were shooting cannons in the sky. C.W. Post, the guy who Post cereal guy, he literally blew up the skies in Texas. Hatfield out in San Diego caused floods. The list goes on. You can see it. All of this is available on Weather Modification History. Start at 1800 and go to present. So it went pluviculture, pluviculture, cloud seeding, and now geoengineering. Missing from Dr. Fleming's list is obviously space weather modification. When I interviewed him at the Weather Mod conference, he said he hopes to include that in his next book. So that's going to be epic. And I really look forward to it, Dr. Fleming. Please, any way I can help, I already emailed you that. But please read this paper because it really sums it up well for you that these guys don't understand what the heck they're doing. And that makes them dangerous, and this has happened before, and those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. The problem is, that's not stopping, the current push for it. DC leaks, Hillary Clinton supports geoengineering or climate intervention. And what it turns out was in the DC leaks that John Podesta, of Spirit Cooking fame, had something called the Energy Future Coalition Steering Committee where they talked about things like this. We want to do geoengineering. We can get funding from the government to do this, but we better wait till after COP21 or the Paris Accord to get the funding to do it, because if we try to do it beforehand, it may shoot the discussions in the foot about cleaning up the planet and stopping pollution, mainly CO2 and that whole carbon tax scheme they got going on. Which is basically technocracy, 101, the balance load. See Patrick Wood's Technology Rising. The guy's amazing. Best reference book I ever read. But this whole technocrat idea of balancing the load with geoengineering, it's not going away. And the carbon credit unit, monetary unit, is a thing they're trying to push. Communitarian law, global governance, Solar Radiation Management's Governance Initiative, SRMGI, and apparently even the Spirit Cooker-in-Chief has an Energy Future Coalition Steering Committee that wants to push that. So, thank God we didn't get Hillary. Now we just need to hear Trump say out loud, I don't want geoengineering. I think it's a stupid idea. I'd love to hear that. Mr. Trump, Prez, please say it. I want to hear it because I don't want to have to break your balls. That would be horrible for you and me. But the problem is, geoengineering climate fixes could harm billions. And this is a known fact. And I'm going to break down the science behind it because it's not even debatable. And it's got a basis in, history as well. So what Edward Teller, Roderick Wood, and Lowell Wood and Roderick Hyde were talking about was they observed the Mount Pinatubo eruption. And when it erupted, it shot millions, trillions of pounds of sulfur dioxide into the sky, and the whole planet cooled. And they looked at that volcano and they went, we could do that. Maybe we could spray some sulfur in the sky and pretend we're making a volcano, and that would be a good thing. Using aerosols to block solar radiation represents one approach to geoengineering. Schemes to tackle climate change could prove disastrous for billions of people, but might be required for the good of the planet, scientists say. By the way, there's a shot of that whiter sky we were talking about. That's ice refraction. It comes from jet aircraft mainly, and that is the subliminal ice haze Chuck Long was talking about. So geoengineering is already happening today. And what did they say? If we stop, it could, also be a bad thing. So where are we really at in this? They're busy trying to fund geoengineering in the future, get global approval to spray the whole planet, to regulate the temperature, and they say it could harm billions. Well, there's this thing called the Integrated Assessment of Geoengineering Proposals, or IAGP. And they've written a couple papers. I hope that you'll read them all because they're pretty freaking funny and sad all at the same time. But if you're looking for a depopulation agenda, this is one that's right in your face. They are pushing a technology that they say and know and have computer models to prove that it will kill people. Dealing with the winners and losers. Peter J. Irvine showed it to you earlier. It's been known for quite some time, yet they keep charging along. And what do we get right here? It goes like this. Monitor observations of what's going on. Decide to solar geoengineer. Estimate amount of solar geoengineering needed using simple computer model. Geoengineer, including random technology failures. That's a freaking 747 or a DC-8. That's a freaking commercial aircraft, okay? I mean, you guys are seeing this, right? Geoengineer, there's the plane. Simulate 1 year on a computer. IAGP, these are about computer models, and then monitor observations, limited model outputs, added noise. So basically they're trying to model something they could never ever model in a computer. I'm a computer modeler. I actually modeled 3D maps. I did texture mapping, texture projection. I did Lightwave 3D, 3D Studio Max, Maya. I actually helped develop a project called TrueV for Positron Publishing back in the day. Made video games for, I made 3D maps for Rogue Spear using 3D Studio Max. I understand what goes into computer models. And I understand that it's all an illusion. I mean, what we do, even in the latest Avengers Infinity Wars movie, that's still an illusion. It is based in physics. It has to, or it won't look real. But it's still an illusion to think that we could possibly model our climate because we don't know jack about aerosols. And what's the number one proposal going around for this geoengineering crap? Aerosols. So that's why when I went to Ed Griffin's third conference, Freedom Force International's third conference in Phoenix, Arizona, December 3rd, 2016, I gave a presentation entitled Geoengineering, Weather Modification, and Weaponizing Nature. You can watch the video of it right here, and
Elf Waves can
you'll
a couple
see me go through the whole damn history.
Boy Scout and
pretty epic stuff. Please watch this video. It's one of my most important I've ever done. By the way, I'm going to be doing another one of these very soon. And you can download the PDF slides, the Google Slides script, grab the PowerPoint. This is free of charge. You can use it yourself, send it anywhere you like, flip through it. I mean, it's 86 pages long. I go through the whole darn history. And I did this on stage. Pretty good stuff. So, why am I bringing this up? Because in that presentation, here is, the thing that we were talking about earlier. Geoengineering will kill people. And this is the point that I want to make. That was the Peter Irvine quote that I showed from Ken Caldera's forum. And here's the IAGP right here. Solar geoengineering led to serious side effects. Reduced rainfall over semi-arid areas south of the Sahara Desert. When solar geoengineering stopped, the climate rapidly rebounded. We cannot tell how much solar cooling was caused by solar geoengineering and how much resulted from natural climate variability, e.g. volcanic eruptions. Now over here, geoengineering SRM affects rainfall, creates winners and losers. Drier, red. Wetter, blue. So this looks like global weather modification. It will affect rainfall worldwide. So is the goal here to truly cool the planet, or is this about water resources and who's going to have control of all that water? And what you generally see right here in the bottom one, the rainfall changes that occurred in the climate model. Blue in the southern hemisphere, red right across the center, and there are going to be a lot of people who lose rainfall permanently. And that, bye-bye Mexico, Panhandle, all these areas, India, your rain is gone. there's going to be a lot of dead people there. And how do we deal with those winners and losers? And that is a big freaking problem. So that's why I'm concerned about this. And that's why I, call these guys out. And Ben Kravitz is one of the main guys who talks about the rainfall effects of geoengineering. You can read many papers by Ben Kravitz on how it's going to affect rainfall worldwide. So this is the actual PowerPoint right here that I'm flipping through. And you can see, all of that stuff. Paris Agreement, COP21, climate geoengineers is what countries have agreed to do, although they haven't really realized they've agreed to do it. Geoengineering to alter climate moves closer to reality. Academics call for geoengineering preparation in wake of Paris Agreement's deadly flaws. So this was set up. Go make promises you can't keep, and then give the alternative. And that alternative will kill billions. And just press along. The problem with that is we're already geoengineering. We have been geoengineering for a very long time. We just haven't finished the experiments, I guess. And I wrote this paper originally over on MIT's ClimateX, and that is at climatex.mit.edu. And you can see it here. It got so many shares that they took the number off. I mean, it was at almost 1,000 Facebook shares, and then I got it says 109 up here now, and that's been edited. It was over 1,000. And I got a message from friends like, dude, they took your share button count down because it's been, anyway, regardless, that's just me bragging. But this paper is about that, ship tracks and contrail cirrus, and how we're already geoengineering the planet with ships and planes. And that's a big problem. I hope you guys will read this because I really go into it in depth. It's very lengthy. It goes through the Arctic Methane Emergency Group, how we're about to kill a massive accidental experiment to reduce global warming, where they talk about, ending ship tracks. And they're like, but we need to continue to do ship tracks. So geoengineering on a global scale, using jet aircraft, less warming, more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. And this is the one, accidental geoengineering, Smithsonian, airplane contrails, maybe accidentally geoengineering the planet. So what is it? I mean, we're already geoengineering. Everybody knows that. This is not a doubt. So why are we even talking about strato hoses, strato cruisers, Scope X, Indy Max, eCliff 2, Access 1 and 2, all of these projects and programs are running when we're already geoengineering the planet? And that's really where everybody's at right now. So it's already happening. It can kill people. And if they continue to do it and they get their way and they get their global governance, feces consolidated, they will kill billions. And that's something we really need to stop, because we really have screwed up the weather on a grand scale. And the big picture is this. We've coated the oceans in plastic, which is screwed with evaporation. We have cut down the old forests. They make cloud seeds. They create clouds. And companies like Monsanto created pesticides that kill bacteria, like Pseudomonas syringae, which are frost-creating bacteria, which are natural cloud seeds as well. So we kill all the bacteria in trees that make clouds. We shut off the evaporation of the ocean by coating it in plastic. We replace it all with weather modification on a global scale to the tunes of trillions of dollars. And now they're pushing forward with their agenda to geoengineer the planet to control the thermostat of the planet. So that is the big picture. Geoengineering is already occurring. If they get away with their plans to make it to just keep on biggering and biggering, it's only going to get worse. And that's why I say plant trees or geoengineering could kill billions. Now, that's my big picture. I've been doing this since 2011 in earnest. I hope you guys will continue to support me on patreon.com/ClimateViewer. I hope to see you guys over in the chat room. In order to get to the chat room, just go to the top of ClimateViewer.com, and right up here at the top, you can either on the mobile menu hit the chat button there, or if you're on desktop, it'll look like this, and there'll be a chat button right here. It'll get you right in there. There's an invite link to our Discord. I'd love to hear from you over there. And I'd like you to also check out weathermodificationhistory.com, because there have been 3 cycles to this already: pluviculture, cloud seeding, and geoengineering. We didn't even mention cloud ionizers or ionospheric heaters, because it's another video for another day. But I'd like to leave you guys with this, and I hope you enjoy it.
You don't know me, but my name's Si. I'm just the O'Hare delivery guy. But it seems like trees might be worth a try. So I say, let it grow.
My name is Dan.
And my name's Rose.
Our son Wesley kinda glows. And that's not good, so we suppose we should let it grow.
Let it grow, let it grow. You can't reap what you don't sow. Plant a seed inside the earth. Just one way to know its worth. Let's celebrate the world's rebirth. We say let it grow.
My name's Marie and I am 3. I would really like to see a tree. La 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 lee. I said let it grow.
I'm Grammy Norma, I'm old and I've got gray hair. But I remember when trees were everywhere and no one had to pay for air. So I say, let it grow.
Let it grow, like it did so long ago. It is just one tiny seed, but it's all we really need. It's time to change the life we lead. Time to let it grow.
My name's O'Hare, I'm one of you. I live here in Thneedville too. The things you say just might be true. It could be time to start anew and maybe change my point of view. Nah, I say let it die. Let it die, let it die. Let it shrivel up and come on, who's with me, huh?
Nobody.
You greedy dirtbag!
Let the love inside you show. Plant a seed inside the earth. Just one way to know its worth. Let's celebrate the world's rebirth. We say let it grow.
I hope that this has been an informative video. I hope that you guys see the big picture. I hope that you guys will plant a tree yourself. And pretty soon I'm going to offer that as a reward over on Patreon. We're going to plant trees in honor of those who support us. But that's the real big picture of climate change, how we fixed it before and how we need to do it today. And we really need to look these geoengineers in the face and say, enough's enough with the crazy spraying ideas. It's time to start planting trees. It's time to do it the right way, to live in harmony with nature, and we can do that. We have the technology to do it. We just need people to resonate this idea and get the government involved in spending their money on something that'll actually change our climate today. Fix the problems that matter, not the ethereal ones of the future, and then those won't exist. And we certainly should do everything we can to oppose geoengineering, because it will harm billions. People are not to be trusted. And if those two reasons aren't good enough for you, look at the other 27 I showed you in the Alan Robach video. We have got to make a stand against geoengineering, and the people who would continue this military, industrial, corporate, college, just horrible idea. It's a climate change pollution solution that involves more pollution and control of the sky. So with that being said, I hope that you guys will spread this video around, continue to support me, and I do hope that you will attack ideas, not people. If this video resonates with you, leave me a comment, because I love hearing from y'all. First time here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. The bell doesn't always work, so come to ClimateViewer.com and sign up for our newsletter. Remember, it would be impossible for me to do this without your support, so please join my Patreon or buy me a coffee on PayPal. And always, attack ideas, not people.